Hi, everyone. I'm Frank. I was about to say I'm Frank. I'm an alcoholic. It's literally what I would be saying. Crazy. Wow. And start off with that the Talmud does tell us we should always start off with a joke, right? It says we should always start out with a joke. So here's my joke. At one time in my life, I believe because of the color of my skin, I was better than another human being. Racism is a joke. It really is a joke. So to get this set up to where we can get so you get the understanding of where I'm coming from, we have to talk about my favorite subject, me. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about, right? Because most of them, all the rest of the human race is the same way. So don't get so spiritual, you float right out. But I just got to break down a little bit about where I come from and how it started, right? So my mom was raised as a Irish Catholic, and she rebelled from her family in the 70s and went with the bad boy of Philly, bad boy Philly guy, which at the time would have been an Italian guy, right? My dad was this Dago, that's the slang term for, my dad was this little Rocky Balboa lookalike guy. And he ran around and he collected debts for people and he sold drugs and bad boy. My mom liked the bad boy. So they get together. I come to in this relationship somehow. You know how it happened, but I happened, and they don't last very long. They were drug addict alcoholics. So my mom left and went back to the Irish neighborhood. She brought me with her, and I never really got to see my dad. And so just to set up that, like, I remember as a kid, sometimes we were on welfare. We used to get food stamps. Now they don't have food stamps now. You have a credit card now. Back then, they gave us booklets of neon-colored money that screamed, "Look at me, I'm the poor person," And my mom would send me to the store in the corner deli of Philly, and we go in there, and you'd have to rip the book. You have to rip them out of the booklet because if you had them loose, they knew you bought them illegally because everyone sold their food stamps in our neighborhood. So it was just a thing to do. I remember I had to go in there and I had to rip the food stamps out. And every time you're doing that, you know who comes in the door? The hottest girl in my neighborhood. You're not bawling when you got food stamps. So, and I just remember being a little bit embarrassed, just embarrassed. I wasn't ashamed of my mom or ashamed of the situation. I was just a little embarrassed at times. My mom gets remarried to a man who and she had some boyfriends off and on throughout my life at the time, but she finally meets this guy, and just to make it quick, he was not a good man to me. He came in when I was about 8 or 9. He was very abusive, very mentally, physically, he was just not a good man in my life. And he didn't, him and my mom, now she's pregnant by him and they have a new life getting started. And I'm just this half a dago. That's what he was. I was a half a dago to him. So I would have to hear that. So just to make it so you understood how bad it was in my home, as a 12, 13-year-old kid, my school was only 2 blocks from my house. And every day I had to come home from school. And every day, and I used to plan this, and I remember this moment every day when I tell the story or I think about it. I wanted to get hit by a car. And I didn't want to die. I just wanted to go to a hospital. I just didn't want to go home. So I hated having to go home with him. And I tell people in my family that this has happened to me, and my family's like, "Oh, you have to work it out." Now that maybe they did the best they could. I'm not mad at them anymore. Remember, for a long time I had resentment at a lot of it, but I worked through that. They did the best they could. But their job was, hey, just go home. It'll work out. And it wasn't working out. So I'll tell you the reason why when I'm trying to get hit by a car, everyone in South Philly gets hit by cars. I mean, they live on the little, small, narrow streets. You have people that zoom around. Everyone gets hit by cars. It's just a thing to do. They don't mean to get hit by cars. They just get it. And it's always your cousins or your family that run you over because they're all related. All their cousins from the marriage, knew so-and-so. So you can never sue anybody. You just got hit by a car, you shut your mouth, and you go to the hospital and shut up. And I'm this one kid who wants to get hit by a car. And there's that self-preservation because I'm this little fast athletic kid. I was always above the average athletic kid. I was one of those kids. So whenever that car would come to hit me, I remember thinking, oh, this is going to hurt. And right out of the way every time, just right in the last second. And people thought I was like playing chicken, and I wasn't. I just let self-preservation to get out of the way. And I would walk home and I would think to myself, what a loser. I can't even get hit by a car. I'm that big of a loser. And my family, my stepdad's telling me all the time that I'm a loser, I'm a dummy, I'm only going to be a ditch digger in this world. I heard that so many times. You're just going to be a ditch digger. So it doesn't matter what your grades are. It doesn't matter what happens. You're just going to be a ditch digger. That was his words to me. So anyway, one day I go home. It was my seventh grade year, eighth grade year. I go home and I got in trouble at school for something. I was acting up at school a lot now. And when I got home, my stepdad was waiting for me and literally beat the crap out of me. Probably one of the worst beatings he ever did. And when he beat me, he told me, pack up your things, you're gonna move with your dad. So pack up my things, gotta get out of here. I can't wait to go. Now I barely ever see my dad, and my dad lives in the hood. My dad lives up in Southwest West Philly area. Some of you guys might remember a show called Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We talked about West Philly, born and raised on the playground where I spent most of my days chilling out, max relaxing. He moved out of that neighborhood. My white butt moved into that neighborhood. And it was the middle of school year, and I had to go to an all-black school. My dad has a little bar, and this being recorded. So, my dad did his own dealings, and lived in, we had a bar, and it was a rough bar. Like, it was a lot of roofers and longshoremen. So think about that crowd. And that was what my dad's bar was made out of, and a lot of dealings going on. And so that was my dad's life. So anyway, I get put in the school, and I'm the new kid, let alone I'm a white kid, let alone a little kind of punk rock skater kid, but I'm an athlete. So I make it on all the sports teams, which kind of aggravated someone. My baseball team, this was called Pepper Middle School. And if you ever want to Google Pepper, like salt and pepper, it's called Pepper Middle School. I was the only white kid on the base. I was like the reverse Jackie Robinson. Everyone hated me, except for like a couple of my players. People didn't like me. And it wasn't so bad that I played sports, it's that I had to go home after sports by myself, because everyone else had already gone home. We had something to practice outside of school, after school. So I had to go home by myself, and it was not safe. So I start cutting school. I'll tell you this funny story real quick, because it's the way it happened and still sticks me to this day. So I started cutting school every day, and I could take the trolley and go up into the projects and walk to school and risk life sometimes, or I could take the trolley down to the L train and go down to Center City, Philadelphia, and I would do that every day. And I would go down and I would sneak in Ben Franklin's house. Ben Franklin's a really cool guy. He really is. He's a really cool guy. So I used to sit outside the back of this museum and wait for the school kids that were in there for class trips to come out, and I would just hold the door and then sneak in the back. And I go in and I see all the exhibits, and I just hang out in there for hours and do all the exhibits. I can tell you everything about Ben Franklin, right? And just fast forward, just tell you funny stories. But a year later, I go back to school for a minute, and when I was there, my school was like, "We're going to go to Ben Franklin's house for a school trip." So I'm telling everybody, "Dude, if I sneak in there, and I can tell you all about this and his little inventions. And when we get there, I'm going to tell you, being a kid bragging, like, oh, wait till you see this, so you do this." I'm telling everybody how I was like, sneak in. Well, we pulled up to the front door, and they're letting us off the school bus. Big sign right in the front, free admissions. Yeah, I never went back to that place ever again. Had nothing for me now. But when I was stealing the knowledge, I was totally down for stealing the knowledge. But going there for free, I was like, stupid museum. Anyway, so that summer, I get to get out of the city. My aunt and uncle had moved their family, my mom's side of the family, had moved their family up to the Lancaster County, around Lancaster, Pennsylvania County area, right? So just to break that down for you, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania is like the hub of the Amish. Like, that's their turf. You go up there, they really ride with them, but like, they don't wait for white people to go, "Hey, let's reenact living this way." They really still turn butter, and it was fascinating to me. No electricity, some Mennonites had electricity, but whatever, it doesn't matter to me. Horse and buggies, cows, pigs, chickens. This is National Geographic stuff. This is deep. This is cool stuff, right? And my cousin lives on this long mile road, and there's another normal family. I don't mean down the Amish, which I don't think they're watching this, because I can't, but you know what I mean? Like, the other family was normal. And all the rest were Mennonites and Amish. So when I went up there the summer before I spent the time with him, is the reason why I was a punk rock skater. He was a punk rock skater kid. My cousin that lived up there, he was a couple years older than me, and I just totally looked up to him. I'm the youngest of 7 cousins that were like kind of raised like brothers in a way, like a whole bunch of us. After me was a bunch of girls were born in our family, but it was like, and we were all really, really close. Like I was the younger brother to each one of them. It's just the young ones. I didn't have my dad around. Most of them still had their dad. So anyway, my cousins all kind of took care. So I go hang out with this one cousin for the summer, and as soon as I get up there, I walk in his room, and he had like a swastika and a picture of like Hitler, and he had a Confederate flag. Now, this summer I went up before, he had an anarchy sign and all this other stuff, you know? So this was just new to me. So, and I had known my grandpa fought in the war. I knew this was bad stuff. I knew the Confederate flag was bad. And so when he comes home, I remember thinking, like, wow, this is kind of bad stuff, but whatever. And then he starts to tell me about how it's really just for the white race. Okay. That night, all these other neo-Nazis, because now my cousin's shaved bald, he's wearing nicely cropped pants, he's wearing this different jacket, he's not all ripped up, it's not all punk rock, it's kind of like he's put together now. And at night, these other neo-Nazis used to come over his house, and they would climb up this balcony, and they'd come over and they'd bring beer, and they sometimes would bring girls over, and they were all guys shaved with tattoos with swastikas, and they had cars, and they brought beer, and they brought girls, and they were cool. They were just cool to me. When these guys would all come around and they'd start talking, they would say things like, yeah, multiracial society, that don't work. And I'm like, whatever that means, okay, but whatever. When they start talking about blacks and whites, I was like, you don't know. And my cousin would say to them, yo, my little cousin lives in a really rough neighborhood of Philly. And these guys would start asking me, what's it like? What's it like being around them? And I just gotta tell you that my parents, if I walked home, either parent and either step parent, if I came home with a black eye or a trophy, I never heard, hey, where'd you get that from? I just didn't. They didn't have time for me. It's not just the truth. They didn't have time for this kid. They both my parents were remarried, had new lives with people. I was just this kid they made in their little drug and alcohol fueled relationship, whatever. No one talked to me about what it was like when I ran home from school. Just toughen up, kid. And now these kids are talking to me, these guys, to me, they were guys, they were 16, 17-year-olds. They were cool. I'm 13 going on 14, they're cool. And they're asking me, what's it really like being around black people? And I would tell them, and it felt good. It felt like people were actually interested. Now, again, these guys ain't that manipulative that they're like, hey, let's train this guy. They were just being kids too, but they would ask me, what's it really like? There was this one girl, I won't say her name because it's being recorded, but there was this one girl who was kind of the queen bee, you know, that type of girl. Like, I don't hang out with other girls because they're all backstabbers. But, you know, if I'm the girl around, I'm the only girl around. So, queen bee, queen bee. So she stood above me one time and was like, so you're gonna tell me, and she was drunk, and she was like kind of calling me out in front of everybody. She was like, you're gonna tell me you take the bus with black people every day? And she didn't use the word black, I'm sure of that. But I remember looking at her going, yeah, I gotta take the L train every day. Of course I think like that's, to me, that was obscene that she would even think that. But then I thought about it, even then was thinking, if I sat her down and stood above her, I was like, so you're gonna tell me you see Amish people every day? You know, because it's perspective of living. I love that. And then when we would go out, all the neo-Nazis would go out and I would go with them. And I got to tell you these stories just to set up where this goes, because when I would go out with these guys, we'd be at a nightclub, and now I would only know 5 or 6 of these neo-Nazis, and I'd be meeting up with another 5 or 6 from this town, another 5 and 6 from this town, and 4 or 5 from this place, and they'd all be meeting together at this nightclub, getting in fights and pushing people around and doing all this stuff. And then we'd all sit outside in the parking lot, and when the nightclub would let out, nobody came near us. You would see people walk out that door, and they would just see us, and you would see that look like, holy crap. And I love that. I love that look of fear. Up until that point, you know, I gotta be honest with my life and where I was. I might be a 14-year-old athletic kid who can scrap okay. But really deep down inside, I mean, I'm about an 8 or 9-year-old. I stopped growing when my stepdad came around. And I feared everything. I feared my school. I feared my parents. I feared my step-parents. I feared if I was gonna have enough food to eat some days, for real. Now someone fears me, like that, it's on. I like this. So now, again, we start talking about the multiracial stuff, black things, Puerto Ricans, because I've fought a lot with Puerto Ricans in our neighborhood. You know, it's an ethnic neighborhoods of Philly. You know what I mean? We fight within other neighborhoods. We even fought with the Italians, even though I had some Italian in me. But they would all start talking about these things. And I remember we went to our first little gathering. They brought me up to Reading, Pennsylvania, and we were at this little compound thing where a guy was reading out of the Bible on how to hate. And that's what they use. And so as we're doing this, when I was a little kid, when I was like about 10 years old, I remember my uncle one time came home, and I'd heard these sayings before in our neighborhood, but I never really caught on to it. My uncle came home and said, yo, I went to the store today and Johnny didn't give me the right change back. Johnny's always trying to Jew people. And everyone would laugh. And I never got the joke. So I remember asking when I was 10, now this is years earlier, I'm asking, I was like, why is that funny when you say that? Or when, they always say, well, if you pick up a penny, what are you, a Jew? I never got the joke. So I asked him, why is that funny? And he goes to tell me when I was 10 years old, he goes, well, see, Frank, the Jews, they're kind of notorious for money. You know what? You'll get the joke when you're older. You're not going to get it right now. You'll get it when you're older. Well, when I'm at my first rally, my first little gathering of these guys, they start telling us about how the Jews secretly siphon money from the Federal Reserve, and they fund Israel with this money that they steal from the Federal Reserve. Now, I'm 14 at the time. I'm 48. I still don't know what the Federal Reserve does. You know what I mean? But it's always bad news. Whenever he hears about the Federal Reserve, oh crap, what's going on, right? Well, here these guys are blaming, And so when I start hearing these guys talk about this, what it did to me, it unlocked the joke. I remember being in that meeting going, this is what my uncle was talking about. I must be an adult. I must be older because I'm getting it now. I want to know what the adults know in my life. They left me to fend for myself. I want to know what they know. I want to know why that joke was funny. So this must be the truth. I must be learning the truth. And look, I truly bought into this stuff. I went back home, I go back to Philly out of that summer. Now I'm a full-on, I shaved my head, I'm fully involved. And I got to go back to Philly where there aren't that many neo-Nazis. But I remember I was easily able to recruit the Irish kids and even some of the Italian kids because we did the same thing. They'd be like, oh, they hate the black kids on the other neighborhood. And again, the black kids hated us. It was this whole big thing. So now I got to say, hey, that's what we're about. See, I'll tell you right now, the biggest, like I told you, racism is a joke, but it's also not a joke. It's the biggest, greatest bait and switch ever pulled. When we would find guys who would go, yo, I just want to be proud of my white race. I want to be proud of, why can they say I'm black and proud, but we can't say we're white to be proud? And I said, yeah, man, that's what we're all about. You should come hang out with us. You should come to one of our things. And when you came to one of our things, we never talked about being white. We always talked about them, what they're doing, why they're ruining everything. You can only talk about Leif Erikson so much. You know what I mean? So there was like this whole big thing to where it's a switch. You want to be proud of your heritage, but we don't ever talk about our heritage. We talk about how everyone else's heritage is ruining our heritage. I got good at doing that. You brought up the word BET, Black Entertainment, because that was a big thing at the time, the big topic back then. This is late 80s, early 90s. People say, oh, why did they get the Black Entertainment television, but we don't get white entertainment television? That was a very common talking point back then. And I would jump, oh, really, BET. If you do white entertainment television, that's not a good acronym for a normal channel. It's more of a paid network you might want. You know what I mean? I don't want to get too crazy with it. You know what I mean? Don't work. But that's what they would say, white entertainment. Why don't we have white entertainment? Why do they have the Negro College Fund? And I'm like, that's right. Why don't we have the white college fund? We can get into how I know my neighborhood now had tons of different funds for kids of our neighborhood, Irish kids and all that. That wasn't offered to anyone else. But back then, that was a thing to argue. Why do they get that and we don't? So I got real active in this movement. By the time I'm 15, I'm out of my house, living in compounds and going from safe house to safe house, just living in the criminal element of this. We're selling guns, stealing guns. Guns was a big thing for us. All types of criminal activity. We have guys that are starting to rob banks. And then we have people that are like kidnapping people and holding people for ransom. It wasn't like we went out and like looked for innocent people, not to try to justify anything that I've done. So I own what I've done. But like I went to prison for kidnapping an Antifa member because they're the biggest thorn in the side of the neo-Nazi world. Is the Antifa movement. And so you've all heard of it. I'm sure it's been in the news, Antifa. And just so you know, the anti-fascist movement was founded by Jews in England who were against the sympathizers after the war of the Nazis. That's the first anti-fascist movement. It was founded that way. But anyway, so we used to fight against them and I wound up kidnapping one of those guys. But before that, I wound up going around, I used to do all the TV appearances for the neo-Nazis. There's some stuff on YouTube about me. And then I also had my own cable access television show in Springfield, Illinois. By this time, I made my way out the Midwest, living in different safe houses. And before we go back. Because when I was living in Indiana and some of the other safe houses, I was living with guys who were not, they were more about race war. Like, let's start the race war. There were guys that if I would have walked into a room back then and they would have said, hey, here's the keys to a U-Haul. There's a federal building. Because we didn't believe it was going to be white on black. That's not what a race war was. We thought the race war was going to be white against the federal government's getting our own homeland. That's what we talked about. So I would have walked into a room, the guys would have said, hey, here's the keys to the U-Haul. Will you drive it? I would have said, absolutely. By this time, I got a big swastika tattoo on my neck. Tattoos all over, all symbolizing what I believe. Like I'm down, like I'm what you call radicalized. So anyway, I had this television show. I get this television show and cable access, and because back then there was no internet yet, so cable access, kind of like the Wayne's World. We were like a racist Wayne's World. Right? So look, here's what's funny. Like you know, as you all know, eventually I find out I'm Jewish. But I look back on it, I'm like, wait a minute, I worked in television. Even back then, maybe I was always knew I was Jewish. You know? And anyway, I don't want to stereotype. Anyway, I kidnapped this guy. It doesn't go as well. It doesn't go as planned. We let him go, and the cops come to arrest me at the next taping of my television show. And so I go to jail. I wound up getting 3 to 5 years, fast forwarding through some stuff. But while I was in the county jail, I had run into some black kids that were, because we were all the same age. I was only 17 when I first was 17 years old, but I was charged as an adult, aggravated kidnapping with a firearm. It was a whole big mess. Videotaping of because we videotaped the torture of him, so we show all our new recruits. When the cops got the videotape, not very good. And when you have a big swastika on your neck, it's hard to say, "Oh, that's not me." Not a genius. Not a genius. So, while I was in the county jail, I'll tell you, I had a God movement. This is where. So I was in there, and I was reading the Bible because they always say, like, why does everyone in jail always find the God? You know what I mean? Why, when you're in jail, do they find God? It's because when you have a public defender, you need God. Trust me on that. So, and I had a public defender. So I was praying, and I got to reading a part in the book. It talks about fasting. It's fast, then God will reveal himself to him. So I just read this part about fasting, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to fast. I'm not going to eat for the whole 3 days. I picked up this weekend, you know, and I was in the hole. I was in segregation because my age. They kept me in with the crazy people for real because they didn't know what else to do with me. So I was the youngest kid in the county jail. So they kept me locked up in this administration hole where you're just always in your cell. And they keep you there for either your safety and all the people that want to commit suicide, they keep in there. And anyway, I'm in that cell all by myself all the time. And so I remember I did this whole fasting thing, and the guards would come to me and they would say, hey, why are you not eating? And it says in there, you can't brag or boast. You can't brag or boast that you're fasting for God, like, because then it kind of defeats the purpose, because then you're just this guy out there screaming on the street corner, hey, look at me. So I knew that. So I was like, I can't brag or boast that I'm fasting for him to help me here, but I'm going to do it anyway. So whenever the guards would come and they would try to feed me, I would shut my little metal door and say, nah, I don't want food. And they say, well, are you refusing to eat? And I say, yeah. And they say, why? And I said, well, I can't tell you. I said, all right. So 3 days goes by, and then finally the warden comes to me, who was the head of the county jail. I wasn't like a warden guy, that he's called him the warden, but he was like the lieutenant of the guards. He comes to me and pulls me out of my cell and says, why are you not eating? And so I wouldn't answer him, and he goes, like, you're not trying to kill yourself, are you? You're not trying to like starve yourself to death or anything. And I was like, no. He goes, well, why are you not eating? And I felt like telling him, because what I was doing the whole weekend was I was praying that God was going to kill all the guards and knock all them, knock my door and knock the wall down and let me go home. That's what I was like, dude, if you're real, I seriously was like, if you're real, you're going to do this for me. Kill all the guards. Let me go home. I'm done. I've been in there for months, waiting this trial. I'm like, just do it. So he comes and he says, why are you not eating? And I was like, I can't tell you. But I felt like telling him, like, you better say goodbye to all your family friends, because some stuff going down. But I didn't. I just thought I wouldn't tell him. So eventually he says, well, how about this? If you're not on a hunger strike, you're not trying to kill yourself, will you eat tomorrow? And I said, and I'd already planned on eating on Monday anyway. So I was like, for you, Warden, definitely, I'll eat tomorrow. He's like, all right. So next day I ate my breakfast and he was right at my cell right after I ate. He says, all right, I'm going to put you out in general population. I think you belong here. You'll be okay out there. And it was one of the first moments ever where there was this moment that I had with God where it was, he's not going to give me what I want because I'm crazy at the time. He's not going to give me what I want, but he was going to give me what I needed. And that was to get me out of a cell block where I started talking to myself pretty regularly, which a lot of people do in solitary confinement. I started talking to myself. And God put me out in the thing where I started meeting these really cool black kids just by chance. And again, I'm not changing my views. I wound up getting sent up state prison. I got to fast forward, I'm going too long here. I get sent up to state prison. While I'm at I'm in the same prison with John Wayne Gacy. If anyone knows who he is, he's a serial killer, killed 33 boys my age, dressed up like a clown. I'm in the same prison with that guy. He's on death row, right? I'm in there with him. But I wasn't scared of him, and I'm not going to get into the whole story, but he was a person on death row and everyone hated him. And if anyone got a chance to kill him, you were supposed to kill him because you would get all types of accolades in prison for doing it. So it wasn't like I was scared of him. And I was never a person, and I don't mean to try to make prison sound okay. When I first got sent upstate, look, I was this little neo-Nazi with a swastika who had a TV show on the outside. I was like a little celebrity to like the Aryan gangs and stuff in there. They all knew who I was, and so I was totally like, I knew I was very well protected. I never went up to prison thinking, oh, I might have something might happen to me in the showers, the rape, none of that ever crossed my mind. My whole big thing was like, I hope I get food to eat some days. That was my biggest thing. I never feared any of that stuff because I didn't have to. I had big Neanderthal bikers that were like real deal bikers. That's who's in the gang of the Aryans. Well, also when you get up to prison, a lot of the guys in the Aryan gangs are guys who got into the gang in prison, you know? And again, I'm fully involved on the outside. I can speak on any topic, anytime. These guys thought I was like this little smart genius guy. I was just turning 18 at the time. So anyway, what we do a lot in there, we play sports. And so we play basketball sometimes, and sometimes you go out and you just play with your gang. We'd have our own little yard time. So you go out and we'd all play basketball. And when you play basketball with a bunch of bikers, now they never dribbled a basketball. You know, they fix your transmission at 2 years old. And they tell you all about the suicide gear shifts on a bike. They'll tell you all that stuff. But like Chris Rock said, when you play with them, you let double dribbling go. You let traveling go. You can't, you know what I mean? It's big Neanderthal bikers just grab the ball and run with it. You know what I mean? And when you play football, they were just as bad. I mean, they just weren't good at sports. It wasn't their thing. They were good at fighting and good at riding bikes. And that was it. So sometimes some of the younger inmates happen to be black kids from Chicago, East St. Louis, and some of the kids I was in the county jail with. They go play ball, and I would say, hey, can I play with you guys? Because I played with them in the county jail. So they knew I was good. They knew I could dish the rock off. I could alley pass if I needed to. I could do all those things. I was really good at sports. So they were like, sure, come play. Now, and everyone says, well, weren't the white guys mad at you because you were playing with the black? No, because they knew how good I was, and they hated playing with me. And they were like, yeah, go show them what's up, white boy. You know what I mean? And that was it. They were like, go show them what's up. You know, and that was it. There was no gang wars and no tug of war going on at the time. We just kind of all got along. And so I would go play cards a lot. I'd play spades a lot with a lot of the younger black kids, and G and Tony and Jello, and kids that were so funny. Like they were city kids. They talked about riding an L train. I talked about riding an L train. You know what I mean? Like they talked about being on welfare like that. And I talked, you know, I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. And these guys were just so, like, G was just unbelievable, one of the most funniest people. And so when you sit around and play cards with him, he just would bust on everybody. He always had something to say about somebody. Just was a funny dude. And I enjoyed being around him. So by the time I'm getting out of prison, I'm cool with everybody. And again, no, I didn't, this isn't American History X where I get out of prison while I get out of the gang while I'm in prison. That never happened. And I still did everything with my gang. I still went to chow with my gang up to dinner time. I still showered every week. We had different shower times where we all go together, so you all have each other's back. But we were always cool anyway. But anyway, I still did everything with my gang. When I get released from prison, I just was really cool with a lot of people. And I get released and things ain't working so well, so I go back to Philly because I got paroled to Illinois. But I was only 19 years old. So I was like, I went back to Philly where my family was at. And when I go back, I'm still a neo-Nazi. I have this great name to me, my ego, all about my ego. I want to also say this to you all right now. The groups I came up with, no drugs. If you did any drugs, we'd kill you because drug addicts are always the first people to snitch on you. But alcoholism, and where I come from in my Irish Catholic neighborhood, just not knocking the Irish Catholic, trust me, the neighborhood I come from, we're all men. everyone's pretty much an alcoholic, and I was too. And it came up through my genes. So I go back to Philly, and so I have an ego issue. And I get back to Philly, and all these new neo-Nazis are coming around. They all want to meet me. I got out of prison for kidnapping an Antifa guy. I mean, people know me. They know that I started. On top of my head, guys, I have a tattoo that says "Made in Philly." So I was a Philly guy. I was the Philly guy. I still have that tattoo to this day, except for my hairline. I'll show it if you want to see it. But hey, don't matter. So I was known in Philly as this guy who would start this original movement that's now gigantic in Philly. And all these guys would always come around, and I would see all these new guys coming around, and they all wanted to hang around me and talk to me. And that was cool. But I remember they would say things like, yeah, you know, well, all Black people are this way. And I just remember I didn't have the cojones to stand up in a meeting of all of us and go, guys, they're not all that way. Like I just spent some good time, you know, I just was feeling it internally, you know, and I would hear when they would say things, and I'd say, wow, that sounds stupid. And I was like, you know what, Bo? I used to say the same thing when I was his age, you know? And I'm like, did I sound that stupid? I thought I sounded brilliant back then. You know, there's that type of moments. So I had this little moment where I remember I was going up to a certain part of Philly, and I was on a train by myself, going to go meet up with all my skinhead friends and all these neo-Nazi guys. We were going to meet up for a weekend, and I'm headed on up there. And I remember making this deal with myself. I was like, you know what? When they talk about Blacks and Latinos, like, because I was really cool with a bunch of Latino dudes in prison too. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to take part in that. But when they talk about the Jews, I'm on it. I didn't know any Jews from prison. I didn't, you know, so I didn't have this change. So I was like, I'm on it. That's most stuff I can debate and talk about. Because the greatest thing that I had as a neo-Nazi, and most of these groups to this day still have, is whenever you corner me in a conversation and you bring up some facts or some figures where all I have to say is these words. That's Jewish conspiracy. Or a Zog, what we called Zog, Zionist occupational government. That's what we used to call it. That was the deep state back then. That's what we called it, deep state. So I was like, I'm just going to stick with that. I could still be part of this movement. I get all my clout. I get all my ego from this. I don't think like that. I just know now that's why I just wanted to be around that group because it gave me everything. And Hashem just had different plans. Because when I'm out of prison, I got a big swastika on my neck, skinhead written on my knuckles, and an aggravated kidnapping on my record. When I fill out a job application, these ain't good people skills, right? HR isn't like, what a dream. Management, swastika management, no doubt. Just doesn't happen, right? So I can't find work, shocker. I can't find work. And a buddy of mine came to me and said, yo, I can get you carrying out antique furniture at the Cherry Hill, New Jersey Mall for a weekend. There's just a 3-day thing. You carry in furniture. This guy does this thing. He's going to sell furniture. Will you take the job? It's $300 plus you make tips. And I was like, yeah, definite, no doubt. Like I need a job. And he goes, all right, the guy that runs the company, he's a Jew. Do you want the job? And I was like, all right. I was like, but wait, did you tell him about me? And he goes, yep, told him all about you. He said he doesn't give a rat's butt what you believe, just don't break his furniture. And I showed up, and Keith wasn't religiously Jewish. He was definitely Upper East Coast. Oy vey, we do furniture, you know, and he definitely fit that mold. And so I worked for this man. He was a big Philadelphia Flyers fan. I was a big Flyers fan. So anytime we had that awkward movement, we were carrying a piece of furniture. How about them Flyers? Good draft picks, yeah. Good draft picks, yeah. You know, just that small talk. But other than that, didn't really talk much with the guy. And so at the end of the weekend, I made about $600 in tips. He owes me $300. And I remember going to work that day thinking, he's not going to pay me my money. He's going to know I made all this money in these tips. He's going to, you know, and look, here goes the thing too. Yeah. Every one of us in this room has sometime driven to work and planned the argument with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, I know he's going to say that. He's probably going to dumb Dallas Cowboys jersey. Sorry, Dallas fan. You know, and you run the whole argument in your head. And he's going to say this, and I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say, I know you kissed your cousin in 8th grade. So what are you talking about? You know, you have a whole big argument planned out for the guy. And you're waiting to have that argument, and then you get to work, and you see the person, and you're like, yo, what's up? And then they were like, yo, what's up, Frank? And you're just like, man, no, forget about it. Because I like the argument in the car. I'm again, recovering alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic at the time, but I love a resentment. Give me a good resentment. I'm like a cat with a ball. You know, give it there. You know what I mean? I love a good resentment. And I have it with this guy. He's not going to pay me my money. And so when he comes up to me and he says, here, I owe you money. I said, yeah, $300. He says, here's one, here's two, here's 300, here's an extra $100 for really good work. And I was just like, all right, now I got like $1,000 and you just ruined my whole argument. Now he isn't the first, that isn't the first, it wasn't right then and there. But what he did was he gave me a ride home. We started talking, he gave me a job. He said, why don't you come work for me full time? And I went and worked for him full time. He was like, you're a good worker, come work for me. And I used to drive a lot with him in the truck, and we used to drive around New Jersey and go up to North Jersey, pick up furniture and go all around and pick up new antique furniture to get refinished in our warehouses and then get them out in the storefronts, could be at a bunch of storefronts. And this dude overcame an addiction and started doing this furniture work. And like now you have 2 major stores and 2 of the biggest malls in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I just was like admiring the guy. He's a deep, good guy. And at the time was the O.J. Simpson trial. So what I would do is he would drive and I would sit in the passenger seat, again, every day with a swastika, looking right at him. And I would read like the best of my ability, because I have a Philadelphia public school education, but I would read the Philadelphia Daily News about the O.J. Simpson trial, and we talk about DNA and life and deep stuff and da-da-da-da-da. But deep down inside, at the time, I'm still a neo-Nazi. I still claim to be a neo-Nazi. Every weekend I still go hang out with all my friends. I mean, he's just the exception right now. But one day I broke something, and you will find people in prison and juvie halls like me all day long. If you put something in front of me or something complexes me, or if I break something and I don't want to be embarrassed, I go, man, I'm so stupid. So stupid. And I don't know, my parents always saying it to me, the ditch digger thing, whatever. So I used to always say it, and I didn't know that I always said it. But I said, I'm so stupid one day. And Keith came over and said, ripped me up. And he was a stocky little guy. There's pictures of me and him on social media and stuff. You're look him up. We're still friends to this day. But Keith came over and he ripped me up. And he said, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. So I cleaned up the furniture, whatever I broke, got in the truck. We're driving through North Jersey. I know if you're from Jersey, Garden State, more like a turnpike state, you know what I mean, for us. So it's just turnpikes, and we're talking and driving. And as we're just talking, he just unloads on me about how smart I am. He's like, you're so smart. Like what you have inside your head is something, and he just knew a lot of people. So he's just like, you're pretty smart, Frank. Like, and he said these words to me, which I use to this day, and I stick to. He said these words. He said, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb, but dumb people can't fake being smart. You just are, And so he goes to drop me off in by my mom's house, and as he drops me off, I start walking, and I remember I was just walking, and I just was like, "What am I doing?" Like by this time, like I said, I already had the Black and Latino thing down, and I'm like, I felt, and I don't mean to sound that I was saying stupid, but what's stupid is when you see that thing, and it happens a lot in America, where you're like, I hate all Latinos except for Juan and John and Craig. Because I know the guy, I went to school, you know what I mean? But all the rest of the ones I don't know, I hate them. Oh, I hate all Black people except for, Michael and John and Craig and even those people you worked with and been around with and seen they're good people. And you're like, I like them, but all the rest. I hated sounding like that. It sounded dumb to me. And he just told me I wasn't dumb. So that's my final day. Now we got to get into some other stuff, so I don't think it's over. But that was my final day. That was the day I'm like, I'm done with this. Like, I don't feel like I'm a productive, good member of society. I have a big swastika on my neck. Like, what am I doing? And then after I got out of it, 6 months later, the city bombing happens. And I knew right away, like I said, I told you, if they would have gave me the keys to the U-Haul, I would have done it. That's where I was. And now I see the end result. Firemen running down the street with a dead load on. Killed me. So I went to the FBI, got real with this. What am I gonna do, sit around in South Philly and tell people neighborhood stories? Yeah, guys, I used to be part of a militia. You might know my neighborhood guys, like, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, come on. So I went to the FBI and they listened to me, because obviously they were ready to listen to anybody. Oklahoma City bomb just happened. So I go, and the FBI listened to me, and then they put me in contact with Anti-Defamation League, one of the first civil rights groups. They said, here, well, I'm going to speak with this group. And the ADL and some other civil rights groups, but the ADL was like, hey, will you go speak to some kids for us? Would you go speak to this group for us? And what it did for me at the time was I had a really bad karma score, like a credit score, but I had a karma score, and it was in the tank. And I was like, I want to build up a karma score. I remember thinking that. I'll go do this because I felt like I was building something. So I started doing that. But then I also didn't want to be one of these guys that just went around on stage, and because I seen other speakers, I seen other people like, hey, I used to do really bad things. Now I don't do them no more. Great. Like, what are you doing? So I went to the Philadelphia Flyers and I started this program called Harmony Through Hockey, where we went into some of the tough neighborhoods in Philly, recruited black kids to come play, arguably, not arguably, the greatest game on earth. No debating. So I started getting kids into playing that, and I did that for a bunch of years, and it went really well. And it's actually called the Ed Snyder Foundation in Philly. If you're helped over like 20,000 kids now. So I moved to Iowa, and I started doing it for some other professional teams. I started working for the Dallas Stars, for the Anaheim Ducks, for the Minnesota Wild, in their farm systems, coming up in their farm systems. And got married, doing all this stuff. I made a decision. I was doing interventions on neo-Nazis. Just kind of fast forward some stuff. I became this hockey coach for youth hockey and AAA and other high-level hockey, and was taking kids all around the country, winning national championships. And now I wasn't just coaching black kids anymore. I was coaching just regular, just normal hockey kids, and kids that could pay a lot of money. It's a very expensive sport. And I remember in 2000, all right, how can I break this down? 2014, I'm coaching hockey. Things are going great. I'm working in radio, doing hockey radio shows, all types of stuff. But I keep relapsing because, as I said, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. I kept relapsing, couldn't stay sober, and get a little bit of time sober. And then I'm just gonna let you guys know, it's the worst 5 years of my life. You would think the neo-Nazi years were bad. My oldest son dies in a car accident, just a random Sunday morning car accident. Then my mom dies of a fentanyl overdose. Before fentanyl was cool, my mom was always a cutting edge. She dies of a fentanyl overdose in a trap house, like a crack house. We call them trap houses. My best man at my wedding kills himself. Who was like my cousin, one of my group of 7 cousins, who was the one I picked to be my best man out of all of them. He kills himself. Then his brother kills himself. Then one of my colleagues at this group I'd started Life After Hate, a colleague of mine stole a bunch of my intellectual stuff, and he went and he sold it to another TV network, because I was doing interventions on neo-Nazis for a long time, and whatever, I don't want to get more into his story, but it was really bad and it hurt really bad. And then me and my wife get a divorce, and some really bad stuff happened in the divorce. Nothing physical, nothing like it was a really bad divorce. And I started relapsing again. That was 5 years. And some other little miscellaneous things happened. I was still coaching hockey. But anyway, I'm getting this divorce from my wife. By this time, I'm making this documentary. In the middle of all this, I'm making a documentary about religion in Iowa. You might think Iowa, not diverse, because it's not. It's diverse in its corn and soybeans, but other than that, there's no other diversity. And I love Iowa. I love Iowa. It really set a good work ethic in myself for work. I've been there for 17 years. But anyway, I'm there doing this documentary about religions and stuff. And there was the Bob rabbi who I become good friends with. I used to eat at his restaurant. He had a restaurant called Maccabee's Deli. And I used to go eat at Maccabee's Deli and eat the whole Megillah. And so we became friends, and he knew my anti-hate work. He knew about my book. We were just friends. So I said, would you be part of my documentary? He says, sure. So we come to do this documentary with him, and he goes, Frank, is this when you're going to tell everyone that you're secretly Jewish? And I'm like, I'm not Jewish. What are you talking about? He says, well, you should look up your last name. Now, my last name is spelled very weird, but actually we still don't know what the origins of my last name is, but that's what made him start talking to me about it. He goes, you should check into your last name. So I put out on social media to my family and said, hey, this rabbi saying we might be Jewish. And da-da-da-da-da. And my uncle writes back. Now I remembered the conversation. When I was 14 years old and I was first getting into the neo-Nazis, my uncle came to me and said he wanted to take me to lunch to talk to me about some things. And here he was telling me, because he was a big Navy guy, loved the Navy, he talked about the Navy. And he took me to lunch and said, man, you want to join a gang, you should join the biggest gang in the world, the military. It's like having this talking to me, what I mean? And he goes, Anthony, just so you know, we're Jewish. And I remember him telling me that, but I was like, he was such a boss. Just like, he's like busting your chops a lot. So I didn't take him as for real. I just thought he was just saying, you know what I mean? So I was like, whatever. Never thought really much about it. So when this rabbi says that to me, I put that out on social media. My uncle writes back. It's like, I told you this years ago. I told you you're Jewish. We have a little bit of Jewishness, right? So, so I remember when I went back to Rabbi Jacobson, I said, you know, I'm finding out that you might be right. And I said, but isn't this all really weird? Like my past life and what I used to believe. And by the time I'd already had the swastika, you know, and he goes, Frank, don't worry about it. You were just another self-hating Jew. You know? So, so now I buy into it, right? I'm like, okay, this is, I said, maybe I'm going to start looking into this. And then all that whole 5 years starts to happen. And I don't really look into anything other than that I'm broken. And in the divorce, I'll tell you the story. In the divorce, I wound up finding this one Jewish girl in all of Des Moines, Iowa. I found the one. And she was like, I'll start dating you. In the middle of my divorce, I'm insane. I'm using again and drinking again. And she was, but she said, yeah, I'll date you. So we start having this relationship. And I tell you this story because what had happened was I left her house. I couldn't stay sober, but I left her house one morning and I was driving back over to my buddy's house where I was staying during my divorce. And again, things were really bad in our divorce. And so I'm driving and I got this lump in the back, you know, I just got this lump in my throat where I just wanted to scream and cry. And I was in the car and then my eyes started welling up and I couldn't see anymore. So I was crying so bad in the car. And I'm just like, like everything was gone. My hockey career is gone. Everything's gone because of this divorce. It was gotten that bad. And I pulled over to the side of the road and I started to scream up to God. Like I just pulled into this church parking lot. And I was like, yo, kill me. Like figure, I'm not going to commit suicide because I felt my cousins do it. And I also in that moment found such forgiveness for them because I was like, this is the pain. I know why they did it. And and I'm just screaming. I was like, yo, kill me. I don't want to kill myself because I don't want to pass this on to my kids because suicide, you just pass the pain down. You don't, you know, is that you take it with you, you just pass it on. And I knew that. So I was like, please just kill me. Like, let a Mack truck hit me. Let a telephone pole fall on me. Please, something, please. And I'm screaming at him and I'm crying. And while I'm doing that, this girl calls me. And I'm in my car and I pick up the phone that the girl's dating and she's screaming, crying on the phone. And I was, you know, when you're a drug addict and alcoholic, you're like, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? You know what I mean? I didn't know. I was like, why are you screaming, crying? Or I was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she says, get back to my house. My sister just killed herself. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. And this happens. So I was like, okay, I'll come over. I went back to her house. But before I went back to her house, and this is my story, you have your story, everyone has their own story. When I hung up that phone on her, this voice, this overpowering voice came to me and said, get to California, I have work for you. Now, get to California doesn't mean go there for the sun and be an actor or any of this stuff. When it said get to California, there was a man that I met 12 years earlier when I was making a TV show about doing interventions on neo-Nazis. I was at a recovery gathering and he came up to me one day and I was at this meeting and he just came up to me and said, a fellow Heeb at a meeting. And I didn't know, again, it's before I knew I was Jewish, before the whole moment had happened. So I looked at him, I was like, I'm Jewish, I'm a former neo-Nazi who's doing interventions on neo-Nazis. Like, come on, I'm not a Jew. And he's like, well, you look like a Heeb to me. And he was just more Jewish guy. It's always a Heeb to me. And he walked away. Me and this guy had stayed in touch, you know, randomly throughout the years. And that 12 years, maybe once every 2 years, I call him because I had his number. And I call him and tell him what was going on in recovery with me at the time, or tell him how bad I was struggling or whatever. And he would always answer the phone. Every once in a while, I'd call this guy. And when that voice said call to California, it meant call him. Because that's right, call him. Because one thing he used to always say to me, he's like, Frank, you have some gifts inside of you, but you need some help. And I can help you. That's what he used to say to me. And now he's a man who's born and raised Orthodox, and now just teaches men how to find Hashem through 12-step programs and all that. He's really, really good at it. He wrestles people like me's ego, which is a huge ego. He wrestles egos out of us with love, and he's really good at it. So when I called him, I said, you're going to take me on, and he became my recovering rabbi. So I moved out to LA so this man would sponsor me. Fast forward, guys, became my sponsor. That's the way to say it. So that was 4.5 years ago. In 2020, the government calls me and says, we hear you have some information about some of your old colleagues who became law enforcement officers, cops, a bunch of neo-Nazis. And I said, yeah, we've always been told when we're in the neo-Nazi world to become cops, because then you get to do damage. You get to do damage, mostly to Black people and minorities. In fact, just to back this up, guys, there's a band called Arresting Officers. If you ever Google it, don't get into it, but Google it, look it up. It is a neo-Nazi band out of my crew, out of Philly, who were cops. One was a cop. And they sing songs about kicking in the heads of Jews and minorities and starting the race war and all that stuff. So the government calls, I go and I testify in front of the Congress. They listen to everything I said. They back up, check everything. They wouldn't let me testify until they fact checked everything I said. And they fact checked everything I said. Everything I said was true. Every name I gave them, every ranking I gave them, everything was true. So they said, will you come testify? I went and testified. And then right afterwards, I get all these death threats. So now to hide out, if you ever need this in your life, or if you never need it, then know when to hide out. The best place to hide out is on a boat. Because if anyone finds out where you are, you just type somewhere else. You know what I mean? That's what you do. It's like great. So I ever got on this boat, and while I was on that boat, I was already, this is 2020, I'm already getting serious about following the path of Judaism. I'm like, I'm down, this is me. So I go and I live on the boat, and it was during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic. So all I did was I watch a lot of videos, and I would do a lot of things by Zoom with people. And it was very comfortable to me because, again, when I walk in somewhere to a singer and all tattooed up, I always felt weird. I just felt uncomfortable in a way. Now I'm getting kind of, plus I would watch videos of like Rabbi Friedman and Rabbi YY. I don't know if any of you guys know these guys. I mean, amazing guys, amazing rabbis. And I would watch the videos nonstop on my boat. And I do a lot of my activism. Anyhow, the Chabad rabbi in LA, in South Bay, calls me and says, hey, we want to come speak at some schools for us during the pandemic. He's like, I want you to come speak at schools. So I go and I have this great relationship. Chabad has always been really close to me now. So he says, I want you to go speak at the school. And so we go there and we're talking. He's like, it's all going to be about Judaism. And I was like, look, I'll talk about my faith and talk about what I can. I said, but I was honest with him. I said, I feel really weird sometimes because like I didn't have a bar mitzvah. I didn't do any of these things. I wasn't raised Jewish. And he just stopped me and said, Frank, if anyone ever judges you, you tell them to go judge Moses because he wasn't raised Jewish either. And I remember just going, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So let's go on real quick so we get this, the other parts. What I start to study and what I start to learn is the activism, right? Look, you look at the, what's his name? Goodman down here in when there was the Mississippi burning. What was his name? Sorry. Anyway, the two Jewish boys that were killed in Mississippi burning, the movie Mississippi Burning, and the history of Mississippi burning. That started the Civil Rights Bill. That's what kickstarted the Civil Rights Bill of 63, 64. It's because these two Jewish boys and a black man, a black kid, were killed trying to get people to register in Mississippi by KKK cops. That's who killed them. So I was like, yeah, we've always been there. We marched with Martin Luther King. Now on top of that, my old heritage, I'm still Irish. Get rid of it. I'm still Irish, but we eat on St. Patrick's Day, we eat corned beef and cabbage. It's a tradition. It was never a tradition in Ireland. It became a tradition here because when they were starving, we fed it to them. It's a kosher meal. And now it's the biggest thing on St. Patrick's Day to eat corned beef and cabbage because we fed it to them. When everyone else hated the Irish. And I'm telling you, if you look back at the time when they immigrated here, everyone hated them very much, did not want them here. We fed them. The Irish and the Italians and the Jews, my other part of my heritage, we've always gotten along because we immigrated together. Our neighborhoods in all the East Coast cities were always right next to each other. And we backed each other up and we moved along with each other. We've always been there. Like one of the main reasons why I eat kosher, why I love eating kosher and staying kosher, is not, there's tons of laws and reasons why, but my favorite is when I knew that one of the things that we used to see was we seen the other tribes catch a goat and they would cut a limb off of it And then they would drag it with them and burn it till it wouldn't die from bleeding to death. They would drag it for 20 miles to another campsite and then cut off another limb and try to keep, because there was no refrigeration. And we came along and said, no, you kill that animal fast as possible and as painless as possible. We were the first animal rights activists. Down. So through that, guys, anyway, eventually I decided to get off the boat. I stayed on the boat, and I am very active, very active. I mean, I go to temple every week. Not to give you my little resume, but I hit 2 or 3, 3 or 4 actually, Torah studies, different ones. I do some stuff with Chabad. I do stuff. So Chabad taught me about tefillin, and I wrap tefillin every day. Then my conservative Jewish friends taught me about my talid, and I wear my talid every day. And then my Reformed Jewish friends and members taught me most of the stuff I know, because I don't know any Hebrew, and they speak in English all the time, right? So it was easy for me to go, oh, okay, I got it, but it's in English. So I'll end my talk. My activism today, real quick, is we have mass incarceration on a scale that we've never seen in this world. Okay, I'm not going to get political with y'all, but I'm going to be honest with you. We have 25%. Actually, we have more like 27% prison population, but we're only 4.9, almost 5% of the world population. Let's break it down by numbers. We have 34% of the world's women's prison population. Women's prison population. And I really truly believe that we need some police reform, not defund. I'm not going to get into it. Just, if you want to know what my activism is about, that's what I do. That's why I believe Hashem made me to do this. And I do have my complaints. I have two things. One is when I first came around, I started hearing some people that were, reform would talk about Chabad, some people talk about reform. And I was like, right now, especially right now, I think we probably need to be united, We need to be a united front. Because Hamas doesn't care. Hitler wouldn't have cared. Where we stood on those things. And then my second and my main thing, if I ever make it up there, I don't know where I go. I don't ever tell I know where to go. If I go up there, I'm going to ask, who put the calamari on the kosher list? Why is calamari not kosher? It's calamari. It's one of my biggest things I miss. And I want to know who put it on there. And I'm going to be the Karen when I get up there. I'm the manager, please, who put calamari on the not kosher list? It's my 2 biggest complaints. Other than that, this has been the most amazing journey. I have such a dependence upon Hashem in my life today. My recovery, which again, who I work with, the man I work with every day, my rabbi, every day, my recovery rabbi, I feel like this, like Hashem is just the zipper, and my recovery in Judaism is what came together perfectly as I zipped up the zipper closer to me. That's my deal today. So thank you guys all for coming out tonight.